I want to ask you something. And I don't want you to answer for me. I want you to answer for yourself. How many hours did you work this week? 60, 65, 70? Now, how much profit did you actually keep? Not how much did you gross, not what showed up on a rate confirmation, but what's sitting in your bank account right now. What's actually yours? What can you actually spend? Because if those two numbers don't match the way they should, if you worked harder than almost anyone you know and you're still stressed about a bill that's due this Friday, that's not because you're failing. And it's not because you're lazy. And in the last four videos, we've talked about the structure problems. We've talked about the miles trap. We've talked about the gross revenue addiction. We've also talked about the chaos cycle that keeps you resetting every single Monday, that keeps every Monday and every week feeling like you're starting over at zero. But today is not about the metrics or the mechanics. Today it's about you. Because underneath every spreadsheet, every fuel receipt, every bad week, there's a person, there's a truck driver, there's a family man. So in this video, I want to talk about what this has actually been doing to you. Because this is the video where we stop talking about the business for just 1 minute and we start talking about your life. Nobody takes the time to ask owner operators how they're actually doing, how they're actually feeling. Dispatchers, they're always asking, hey, are you available? Brokers ask, will you take that rate? Shippers are always calling, and the only thing they want to know is, are you going to be on time? And even your family, as much as they may love you, mostly they kind of ask like when you'll be home or can they borrow some money. But nobody asks, how are you holding up? So let me ask you, how are you doing? Because in my coaching program, I've talked to hundreds of operators about this. Not about just the loads, not about the lanes, but about how they're actually doing underneath all of the stress. And it's usually the five things that continuously come up every single time. Number one, they feel this sleep exhaustion that they can't fix. Not the kind of tired when you take a weekend off and you're good. The kind of tired where you wake up Monday already drained and already dreading because you already know what's coming. Number two, they say they feel guilt. Guilt about missing recitals. Guilt about being short with their spouse because they may be stressed about a load that fell through. Guilt about working this hard and still not being able to say yes to the things and the vacations that their families want to take. Number three, a lot of them have a quiet fear that kind of never goes away. The fear that one bad month, one breakdown, one slow season, or one humongous drop in the rates could pretty much just take the whole thing down. And not eventually, but like next week or next month. Number four, a sense that they're kind of falling behind people who aren't working as nearly as hard as them. They see operators who seem to have it all figured out. They have multiple trucks, less stress, they're spending more family time, and they're wondering what they're doing wrong. And number five, and unfortunately, this is the one that kind of, gets at me the most, is a growing belief that maybe this is just what trucking is. Like, it doesn't get better. That may be the exhaustion, that may be the guilt, that may be the fear, that may be falling behind a little bit and not really understanding how to get out. Maybe everyone feels this way and you feel like you have to accept it. But I want to address this one directly because before we go any further, I want you to understand that this belief is wrong. And I'm going to spend the rest of this video basically proving it to you. But here's what I need you to understand. And I need you to allow this to really sit with you. There is a gap between how hard you're working and what you're actually getting back. And most operators think the gap exists because they're not working hard enough. So what do? They tend to think, let me run harder. Let me work more hours. Let me drive more loads. Let me try to book more miles. You sleep less. You spend less time at home, and the gap doesn't close. It just seems to get worse because the gap was never about effort. The gap exists because of the system you're operating inside of. It's not your work ethic. It's not because you don't understand how to drive a truck. So let me show you what I mean with, some real numbers, because I want this to be concrete and not just an emotional, thought process. The average chaotic operation, the one most operators are running right now without even realizing it, it kind of looks like this: 60 to 70 hours work per week, 3,000 or more miles run per week, fuel costs eating up 20 to 30% of that gross, profit retention landing somewhere between 2,000 and 2,500 a week. That works out to roughly $30 to $35 an hour for one of the most physically demanding and mentally demanding jobs in this country. Now, here's the part that should make you angry, and not at yourself, but at the system. A structured operation running the same truck with the same driver, putting in 15, maybe fewer hours a week, is keeping 3,000 to 3,500 per week. That's $80 to $85 an hour. Same person, same skills, same dedication. More than double the hourly rate for less time work. So, let me ask you let me ask you something directly. If the same operator with the same work ethic can go from $35 an hour to $80 an hour just by changing the structure around the work, what does that tell you about where the real problem was? It tells you that the problem was never about your effort. The problem was that you were pouring incredible effort into a system that was never designed to reward your efforts. And some of you may have been blaming yourself for something that was really never ever your fault. And I think the most important sentence, really, in this entire video is that it's the broken system in which you're stuck in that's keeping you from achieving your desired outcome. I want to talk about three costs that really never ever show up on a profit and loss statement. Because the financial cost of chaos, which we kind of covered in the last few videos, the fuel waste, the lost profit, the $50,000 to $75,000 a year, kind of just walking out of the door and not really understanding exactly where the profit is leaking from. But there are three other costs, and these are the ones that actually keep operators up at night. Cost number one for a lot of guys is time with your family. The average chaotic operator is home 2 nights, maybe one a week. That means out of 365 nights in a year, you're missing between 275 to 300 of them. Your kids are growing up watching you leave more than they're watching you stay. And I know you didn't get in this business to miss your entire life stuck in a random truck stop, counting mile markers as you go up and down the highway. You've got into this business because you wanted to be able to provide for your family. But somewhere along the way, the chaos kind of just took more than it was supposed to. Cost number two that I deal with and hear a lot of my students say is your physical and mental health. Operators in chaos report significantly higher stress levels, worse sleep, terrible diet, and really a lot of health complications that operators with structured operations, they don't have. And this isn't me guessing. This is what I hear over and over and over with multiple conversations with drivers. The stress of not knowing what next week looks like. That's not just emotionally exhausting. It's physically corrosive because it shows up in your blood pressure. It shows up in your sleep pattern. It shows up in your patience with the people you love most. And now let's get to cost number three. And this is the one that a lot of operators and probably most never really say out loud. The sense of who you are. You started this thinking you were building a business, something with your name on it, something that would kind of outlast a single week, a bad load, a single dispatch relationship. But guess what? Chaos kept in. And chaos, it doesn't let you build anything. It kind of just lets you operate in a random survival mode. And there's a quiet erosion that really happens when you spend years surviving instead of building. You start to sit back and wonder, hey, am I actually capable of more? You start to wonder if business owner was ever really true, or if you were just a driver with a fancier title and really just more debt. I've heard that exact fear from operators over and over again. And I want you to hear something. I want you to hear this clear. The fear is a symptom of the chaos cycle. It is not the truth about who you are. The chaos, it crept in, it stole your time, it stole your health, and it's been trying to take your identity too. So don't let it. Here's where I need you to really listen, because everything up to this point has all been about naming the problem. The next part is about why it changes. Everything that I just described, the exhaustion, the guilt, the fear, the identity erosion, all of it comes from one root cause: chaos. It's not the market, it's not your truck, it's not your work ethic, and it's definitely not bad luck. It's chaos. And chaos is not a permanent condition. It's not a personality trait, and it's not, hey, that's just how trucking is. Chaos is the absence of structure, and that's all it is. And the absence of something can always be replaced by its presence. When structure replaces chaos, every single cost we just talked about, it starts to reverse. Your working hours come down, not because you're working less hard, but because you're not wasting energy on randomness. The time with your family, it comes back because predictable lanes means predictable schedules. The financial stress, it eases because profit retention becomes a number you can actually count on. And the identity question that you're facing, the one about whether you're really a business owner, that question starts to answer itself. Because once you're building something repeatable, something documented, something that doesn't depend on you personally grinding 70 hours a week to survive, you're not just running a truck anymore. You're building a real business. This is not a hype claim. This is what happens specifically and measurably when chaos is ultimately replaced with structure. And what I want to show you is exactly what that looks like for a real person. I want to talk about an operator and one of my students named Marcus. And I've mentioned him before in this series, but I haven't told you his full story. And today I think you need to hear it in this video because this is where I feel like it's going to matter the most. Marcus had been running his own truck for about 6 years. 6 years of putting in 60 plus hour weeks. 6 years of missing things, birthdays, anniversaries, his daughter's school play. 6 years of telling himself, next year is going to be different. Next year is going to be the year I figure it all out. And unfortunately, year after year, it wasn't different because Marcus's problem wasn't what he thought it was. His problem was the chaos cycle. When I first talked to Marcus, he told me something that I think about constantly. He said, I used to be proud of how hard I used to work. Now I'm just tired. Now I'm just exhausted. And I feel guilty for being tired because what kind of man complains about working hard? Marcus was a man who had been pouring everything he had into a system that was never ever built to reward his efforts. For 6 straight years, he was grinding. So we started rebuilding his operation, not with motivation, but with structure. One week, we mapped out his actual numbers, not what he thought he was making, but what he was actually keeping after all the costs and all the expenses. That alone was really emotional for him. Seeing the real numbers on paper was an eye opener. Week 2, we identified his first shipper relationship, someone in his own metro area he could start building a repeatable lane with. And by week 3, that first lane was up and running. And Marcus told me something that really kind of changed. He said, that week, something shifted in me. And it wasn't financially yet, but it was mentally. He said, for the first time in years, I knew what Thursday was going to look like before Thursday even got here. By week 6, his second and third shipper relationships were in place. His fuel costs dropped significantly. His profit retention had now jumped from 2,000 or less a week to over 3,500 a week. But here's the part of the story that matters more than the money. By week 8, Marcus had a Sunday, a whole Sunday, alone. He didn't have to worry about next week's freight. He spent the entire day with his daughter. They went out. They ate dinner. Nothing special. He said to me during our next session, "Hey, I forgot what it was like just to be a dad for a day. Not stressed out doing the math in my head about diesel prices or what load. Just a day to relax." 6 years of chaos took that feeling away from him. 8 weeks of structure gave it back. That's not a number story. That's a real life story. And it's available for you too. So here's what I want you to take away from this video. Everything you felt, the exhaustion, the guilt, the fear, none of that is a verdict on who you are. It's a symptom of a system you've been operating inside of without really realizing that there's another option. There's another way. You're not broken, and your business is not broken in some unfixable way. You've been operating without structure in a system designed to extract everything while giving nothing back, or giving back as little as possible. And you've been doing it with more resilience than you're really even giving yourself enough credit for. The fact that you're still here, still grinding, still showing up 6 years in, like Marcus, or 6 months in, wherever you are, tells me everything I need to know about your character. What it doesn't have to tell you is your future, because the same structure that gave Marcus his Sundays back is available to you. The question is whether you want it, whether you're willing to change. The question isn't whether you're capable. You've already proven that every single week you can do this because you kept it going. The question is whether you're ready to stop pouring that capability into chaos and start pouring it into something that will actually give back to you. In the next video, we start building. Not naming problems anymore, but building. Because everything in these first 5 videos was a sequence that led up to this exact moment. Video 1, I showed you it's not a freight problem. In video 2, I showed you that more miles is not the answer. In video 3, I showed you that gross revenue has always been lying to you. Number 4, it named the chaos cycle that's been running your life on repeat for years. And today, video 5 showed you that cycle has actually been costing you something that you may not realize. Not in just dollars, but in Sundays, in the sense of who you are. The next video is called Why Structure Beats Motion. And in this video is where I introduce the actual philosophy, the mindset shift that took Marcus from 6 years of chaos to a Sunday with his daughter in 8 weeks or less. If everything in this video felt a little familiar, if some part of it felt like I was describing your actual life and your situation, I need you to do 2 things. First, subscribe to the channel, because this sequence only works if you see through it. Each video builds on the last, and video 6 is where the real shift begins. Second, I want you to sit with me and, ask one question to yourself between now and the next video. What would it look like to have a Sunday like Marcus has? Not someday, not eventually, but in 8 weeks. And remember, execute the formula, control the fleet, and own your outcome. I see you on the next one.